It's time for the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. The Chauvin trial, ready to go to closing arguments. And look, I'm not surprised that Derek Chauvin didn't take the stand. Not a lot to say in his defense, I don't think, other than to beg for mercy, to plea, I didn't mean it. That's not really a defense. So we're going to see where this goes. I'm looking forward to closing arguments. I'm looking forward to hearing the defense again go through a whole process of saying he couldn't breathe without actually saying that George Floyd could not breathe. I'm ready for them to say again that, well, the knee in the back, that didn't do nothing. It was everything else. He was a big guy, he had a big heart. No, it would have happened any time. Just happened to happen at that moment. Ready for that to be the defense. I'm interested to see how fast the jury comes back with a decision. So we'll see as that moves forward, because things are just getting sadly worse. And this is where we do need to take a look at what happens in our police departments and what happens in policing in communities across this country. Something seriously, seriously wrong. But today I had a little time in the car. I don't usually do this, so as longtime listeners know, I'm not a big consumer of right-wing hate grievance radio. I try to stay away from it because it's just a bunch of old white people complaining a lot. But today I happened to be in the car during the time when Rush Limbaugh would be on. And I just want to remind everybody, Rush Limbaugh is dead. But they keep trying to bring him back from the grave. And this was the really interesting thing, because today what caught my attention is the local right-wing mouthpiece in my neck of the woods got his big dance chance and audition to sit in the Limbaugh chair. So you had Tokyo Teddy Matthews show up in the EIB network, doing the water boy thing. Got to give it a shot. Got nobody else. So he did a Milli Vanilli imitation. Because look, this is what's funny about this. I watch these guys, and I've been watching these right-wing guys for years. And I've gone to the conventions and I've gone to the conferences, and I hate to admit it, I really do, but I've met most of these people, had conversations with lots of them. And very few of them, to their core, believe the stuff that they're spewing. It's about the sale. It's about making money. And every one of them have their gimmick. And this is the part where I'm enjoying this weird moment in the salesman pitch. Because like I talked about the other day, you had Glenn Beck going on this really personal story about a brother-in-law who passed. And, how, he cared for the lawn and he did all this stuff at the church. And then, by the way, now's a good time to talk about lawn tractors. And I'm going, wait a second. How did you get from heart-wrenching, touching moment to buy my stuff? This is right-wing radio. All of the grievance, all of the hate, that's all fabricated. That's to get you to tune in and stay tuned in. So our little Milli Vanilli kid showed up on the EIB today. Complete with all of the script, because you could hear the reading going on. And then this was the masterful part. It was incredible. He would do the little scripted routine, and then, now what would Rush have to say? And they would bring out this weird 5-minute clip of Limbaugh saying, well, back in 2013, here's what Rush had to say. I'm going, did I miss something? Is this the audition to see how well you play with the ghost of Rush? And if he comes back from the grave and gives you the cigar, I don't know. But as I'm listening to it, it's all just so badly scripted. And right now what's going on, if you don't know, right-wing grievance radio, the hate mongers are really ticked off at corporate America for saying that black people should be allowed to vote. That's the bottom line in this. So they're now pretending like, now we're going to go and we're going to hold those corporations accountable. Those corporations who have funded every activity that we've ever done, who have funded the American Legislative Exchange Council and funded all of the think tanks that we get all of our prep information from, funded our stations funded all of our crappy books and all of our events, those corporations, now, so we can look like we care about working people, now we're going to say something. So what it was this weird kind of the fascists talking about how bad fascism is. These are the people who have been at the hip of corporate America for decades. And now they've gone too far. They actually say that black people should be allowed to vote. Can't do that. That's, again, bridge too far. Now, what I find interesting, again, is it goes back to the ghost of Rush. And I couldn't get this out of my head because one of the first Talkers Magazine conventions gave an award to Rush, the free speecher of the year or whatever it is. And he came in and he gave his spiel, and it wasn't what people wanted to hear. He was talking about the sale. It's not about what goes on the radio. It's about keeping whatever you can do to keep them locked in so that you can make the pitch. You can sell the snake oil. You can sell the beet juice. You can sell the vitamins. You can sell the lawnmower off of your dead brother-in-law. It was all about the sale. And now you've got Tokyo Teddy doing the scripted thing, saying corporations are bad. We're with you, working people. We now understand what you're talking about. We now get it. We've now come. And I say, good. We've been waiting for you. Because we've been in this place that corporations are not the answer for decades. You don't get to be Johnny come lately and say, oh, now we care because, well, we can't have black people voting. It's crazy. And the thing is, and I go back to these moments in meeting these people and having conversations with them where virtually all of them are just looking for a job. These are people who couldn't really do anything else. So this was where they got into. They were old radio DJs who couldn't do DJ anymore, so they became talkers. And look, there's some value in that work, but like anybody, kind of lazy. And I've said this before, the right wing does a masterful job of coordinating messages. So it's not surprising that when you turn from one show to another, there is a pre-programmed list of talking points that they all follow. And they all go right down the list, and it's all scripted, it's all political theater, and it's all made focus group tested, think tank approved, to keep you angry and keep you listening. It's been in place for years for people to go and to complain about how bad their lives have been and how they haven't turned out the way they thought they were when they were fifth graders. And this is where they get to go and blame big government and blame the poor and blame those people, not themselves, while talking about personal responsibility and pulling yourself up by the bootstraps. It's insane. Now they're going after corporations. And I'm like, good. I'm glad to have you here. Now let's actually do something. This is the part that I find really important. It's one thing to out of the side of your mouth say, corporations are bad. Look how bad they're big. We're going to boycott them. We're going to do something. Bad enough to do that. And good. Please, have at it. How about actually doing something, I don't know, to actually hold them accountable? For instance, 1953, the top corporate tax rate in this country, 56%. How about we say, hey, corporate America, you got a little too big for your britches, a little too big. We're going to start taxing you like we used to in the old days when we could pay for our roads and our bridges, and we could pay for education, we could pay for healthcare, and we could pay for our wars. Yes, I know the right loves their wars. We could do all that stuff because corporate America was paying their share. But the Limbaughs of the world and the capitalists over there who proudly tell you that they're capitalists, but they're anti-corporation now. You figure it out. I can't. You really want to hit them? You want to hurt them? Tax them. Use that money for the common good. Use that money to rebuild our infrastructure. Use that money to help seniors, help our kids get an education. Use it better than enriching the handful at the expense of the rest of us. Also, since we're now talking about corporations because you think it's a shame that they want black people to vote, how about we start talking about corporations really do, the treatment of their workforce? Oh, I know you're not going to talk about that. How about we talk about getting workers the right to organize? How about we talk about all the times you've gone and complained about those job-killing regulations when people are less safe on the job? You want to be the party of the working class? You want to be the voice of workers? Here's a good place to start. How about helping them instead of just going, well, I'm mad at corporations for letting those black people vote? How about actually doing something that matters? 73% of the people in this country polled recently by Politico and Morning Consult said they believe in collective bargaining, that workers should have the right to collective bargains. Don't you think that'd be a good place to start? How about we take your anger against corporate America and go, you know what? We should empower workers. That'll show those corporations. Balance the power in the workplace. You're never going to do that, because then you won't be able to sell your soda machines and your fizzle bottles and your pillows and all the other crap that you hawk off. It's all about the sale. Remember that, right-wing mouthpiece. You can go so far, they're going to rein you back in. It's about the sale. You're snake oil salesman. It's that simple. And I come back to, I've met so many of these folks. And when I see these auditions of all these people who want to be the next Rush Limbaugh, and they're auditioning of a bunch of them because the guy that they had chosen, I guess, Dan Bongingo or whatever his name is, he ain't working out. Just not happening from what I've been hearing. So they're auditioning people from all over the place. We got to get somebody who plays nice with the ghost of Rush, and we can play clips around. And our Tokyo Teddy here is probably not a bad guy for it. He can read a script. He can deliver a talking point as well as anyone. He's been doing it here in the local area for a couple of years now. He's gotten his chops. A lot better than he was at delivering the prepackaged political theater talking points. But hey, that's something else. I keep coming back to this moment where if you really want to hold the Republican Party accountable and you want to move them to being the party of the working class, again, how about we do something in a bipartisan fashion? Since 73% of people surveyed believe workers should have the right to collectively bargain, how about we force the Republican Party to go, you know what, we're not going to be anti-union anymore. We're going to give workers their rights. The right to join and form unions and to fight for better wages, hours, and conditions. Because if you were really pro-worker, this is what it's about. It's not about this fable that you've been spinning for 30 years that all you have to do is work hard. All you have to do is pull yourself up by your bootstraps. How about we actually talk about what did build the most prosperous working class in history? How about we actually talk about how my grandparents' generation built that? And they did it with smart government, with smart policy and smart investment. They did it with their unions demanding a fair share of the wealth that their labor creates. And they did it with community, people coming together of all different types. And yes, we had problems, and yes, we had struggles, but we were moving forward. And we weren't being torn completely apart. Right now, the alligator jaws of inequality are about ready to snap down on somebody's behind. The haves have more, and the have less. We are in one of the most unequal times in our country's history. This is an opportunity, my right-wing mouthpieces, to actually do something positive other than complain. You guys got the griping down. In fact, when I need a good laugh, I always love to hear people complaining, and I love the conspiracy theories. I love the conspiracy theories. Because I go, you have nothing better to do all day? I can't believe you hold a job. I digress. If you really want to stick it to corporate America, you really want to show them who's in charge, we the people, all of us, you and me and everyone else in this country, we really want to put corporate America in check? Find me the next Teddy Roosevelt. Find me the next trust buster to break up these big conglomerates like Amazon, who has such enormous power that they can spend $200 million in a disorganizing campaign to fight back workers' ability to get those better wages, hours, and conditions, while their founder is saying, we probably should do something about wages, and we probably should do something about conditions, because I hear it's real bad over there. So if you really truthfully, if you want to be more than just a monkey with a grinder box, you want to be more than just the puppet in the show, actually advocate for doing something. Because all I hear is during your 3-hour hate is how much you hate government and how much now you hate corporate America. And no solutions other than, I just want freedom, which I don't know what you're talking about. But at the end of it, I know where you're going to go. I know this is just a little spasm. I know this is just a little temper tantrum, because when the buck hits the road, you're going to fall into line. And the one thing that Limbaugh knew is it's all about the sale. And no, whatever puppet they throw out in front of you to fill the ghost of Limbaugh's seat, he's going to come back to the corporate line and the sale. I often tell the story about the first time I met Alex Jones. And I found, of all of the talkers that I've met over the years, there have been two that I'm not going to say I liked, but that I got along with, and I thought were sincere. Rusty Humphries was the first one. He was a Limbaugh writer for years, does his own show, I guess, down in Atlanta. And Alex Jones. I had a really lucid 20-minute conversation with Alex Jones. And, you know, we had a good talk, good spirited discussion. The second they put him on stage, he went from zero to crazy in the blink of an eye, because it was a performance and he understood he had to deliver. Now, I think whatever his problems lately have been, this is going back about 9 years. Whatever that is now, I don't know. But back then, he was an honest guy in an industry where people are just trying to make a living and get to the sale. And I've been saying this for years. Corporate America has bought right-wing talk radio for their own little message machine, and it just happens that it aligns with the Republican Party platform that they then write. Why? Because it all comes back down to the money that flows in to organizations like ALEC, organizations like all of the state policy network think tanks, and all down the line. It's not that difficult. It's all political theater made to make you angry and hate your government and never solve a thing. So it's going to be interesting to see who they put in the chair. It's going to be fun watching. Love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Going to take a quick break. When we come back, Sarah Kendzior is going to be here to share some thoughts on the Russia sanctions right back after this.
There's nothing more American than workers standing up, and the union gives a voice to win. On the Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1919. That was the day the telephone girls, as they were called, walked out on strike against New England Bell, essentially crippling communications in 5 New England states. It was considered the most massive strike of women workers since the uprising of the 20,000 in 1909. They were members of the All-Women National Telephone Operators Department of the IBEW. Historian Stephen Norwood devoted many pages to the strike in his book, Labor's Flaming Youth. The government had taken over the nation's telephone and telegraph industries during World War I and placed it under the control of Postmaster General Albert Burleson. Just days earlier, thousands of angry women who worked in the Boston exchanges packed Faneuil Hall, demanding immediate strike action. Julia O'Connor, the leader of the Telephone Operators Union, called for the strike on this day at 7 a.m. The union demanded a 60% wage increase and full scale to be reached after 4 years instead of 7. Union and non-union alike responded to the strike call and walked off the job, establishing 24-hour picketing. On the second day of the strike, over 1,000 striking telephone operators marched through the streets of Boston and were cheered on by returning soldiers. O'Connor organized picketing around the Boston hotels where out-of-town strikebreakers were housed. Unionized service workers across the city denied services to the scabs. Postmaster Burleson smeared the striking women as unpatriotic and threatened to replace them with returning soldiers. The soldiers, however, sided with the telephone operators. After 5 days, the union won direct bargaining rights and a $4 a week raise. The strike was considered one of the few post-World War I strikes to end in victory. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So I've been waiting all day to talk to my next guest because today, big news on the Russia front as Joe Biden is putting new sanctions on Vladimir Putin and the Russians. But the story about this Konstantin Kilimnik has popped up again, and the polling data that we've been talking about for the last several years, that everyone knew came from Manafort to Konstantin Kilimnik, and what did he do with it? Open for speculation. Now they're saying right to the FSB. And here to share some thoughts on, what Joe Biden has done, good, bad, indifferent. I've asked our good friend Sarah Kendzior to come talk with us. Sarah's a writer, scholar, co-host of the fabulous podcast Gaslit Nation. Make sure you check out her books, A View from Flyover Country and Hiding in Plain Sight. Sarah, thanks for taking time for us.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So let's start with the Biden sanctions. Good thing, bad thing, thoughts?
Generally good. I mean, actions speak louder than words. We've had people say there's going to be sanctions before and they don't actually follow through. But obviously this is a different type of administration because it's not run by a transnational crime syndicate fronted by a Kremlin asset. So there's the chance that they might actually do something. And so, there are a number of statements today from Blinken, from Yellen, from Biden that addressed a lot of the things that I've been worried about, sanctioning oligarchs, cybersecurity, attacks on elections, attacks on our infrastructure. And so, I'm very glad that they acknowledged these problems exist. This is something that the Democrats in general have had trouble acknowledging, the severity of. Obviously, the Republicans simply cheered it on. I think that's a step in the right direction. I think speaking to the American people about it is a good thing. Being more assertive towards Russia is a good thing. But I'm waiting to see how it plays out because the crisis we're in is very deep. It's a very severe national security crisis, and our institutions were compromised from within, and that includes the Treasury, the State Department, the FBI. And so it's going to be difficult, I think, to try to carry out these actions when there are very likely complicit actors still within those institutions.
Now, one of the things that, someone had asked me today, is this proof that Trump and the Russians were in contact? Is this the smoking gun? Is this the proof?
Oh, for the love of God. I mean, I've been giving the smoking gun, we're on year 5 of the smoking gun. And the reason the gun's still smoking is because no one will take away the gun. The gun keeps getting fired. Trump and Michael Flynn and Roger Stone and Paul Manafort all still have the smoking gun.
Thank you.
I mean, this is ridiculous. Someone brought up Kilimnik today. I was able to cite a passage from my book in which I describe Manafort and Kilimnik, exchanging this polling data at 666 Fifth Avenue, the building formerly owned by Jared Kushner, and it's in a book I wrote in 2019, and I was citing other people's work. They had already reported it. I found clips of myself on television discussing it in 2018. People have memory hold so much information. They've memory hold Konstantin Kilimnik. They've memory hold the Mueller report. They've memory hold all of these incredibly blatant associations between Trump and his partners and the Russian government and the Russian mafia and Trump's 40 years of history with the Russian mafia. I mean, they memory hold the first impeachment, which was, about Trump shaking down Ukraine on behalf of the Kremlin. My Lord, it's nothing but smoking guns. It's like a freaking arsenal. I don't know what more people need. Well, I know what they need, actually. They need people to be indicted. They need accountability. They need this to be talked about in a straightforward way. What I found when, people talk about it in a straightforward way like I do and like Andrea Chalupa does with me on Gaslit Nation, everyone gets very furious with us. Maybe they won't anymore. Maybe they'll finally, get up and protect this country. We'll see.
No, we'll see. And I see this as, again, we're in this polarized world where, the right, I heard whining and complaining that this is just Joe Biden playing politics. I'm going, no, this is stuff that we've been talking about for years now. There's no surprise here.
Well, yes. And it's also, this is nonpartisan. Like, I know people like to think that a coup, a attack on the Capitol, a purposeful spread of a plague is like a partisan issue, but, Republicans and conservatives are dying in those situations too. If there's a cyber attack on American infrastructure, which is something I've been worried about for a long time, Russia did hack our infrastructure, did commit the worst cyber attack on the U.S. in its history in 2020. To my knowledge, that attack is still ongoing. It's not going to be like the blue states and the blue cities that suffer. These demarcations are not that strong to begin with, but it's like we all suffer. We all suffer as Americans when elite criminal impunity continues and when hostile foreign states attack us. And so it's not even in the self-interest of, Republicans or people who hate Democrats or whatever you want to define yourself as to be against what the Biden administration is doing. I think it's rational to be against war, to be against military action. That's not what they're proposing. They're proposing sanctions and cybersecurity, defense of our critical infrastructure. Like, those are rational policies that are only hitting oligarchs and elites. It's like everyone's rightfully bitching about the awful elites. Well, that's who's getting slammed here. It's people like Konstantin Kilimnik. It's like everybody should be for the policies that were laid out by Biden and Yellen. I don't know how Putin and the Kremlin are going to react to them, but I was glad that I did not think they were like strident or militaristic. I do not want war with Russia. I'm adamantly against any kind of, real military conflict, but I'm very much worried that the new terrain is, cyber warfare. That's what I'm concerned about. So I'm glad a lot of the focus was on that.
No, I agree with you. And, but what do you do if it escalates to that next point? How far do you take this? I mean, I've been surprised over the years how much the Republican Party has bought into the Putin, line and been really more pro-Russia than they have anything else. I've been surprised by this because I grew up during the Cold War. I grew up with that's an enemy. Trust but verify, all of that stuff. And yet we were told, no, there's no collusion, none of that stuff. And now we're finding out all that stuff was, true.
Of course it was true, but it was also something that was to be expected because Russia under Putin is incredibly similar to the Republican Party, ideologically, and also in terms of the financial goals of the backers of both those parties. They're backed by the same people. They're backed by, transnational criminal elites, and they also share, an interest in white supremacy. They want to control countries demographically. They exploit evangelical, groups, Russian Orthodox groups. They are misogynistic. They like to, prop up this kind of hyper masculine, heroes. They know how to use propaganda. They use the same companies often, to create propaganda, to do data mining. Like, they've been in cahoots for a long time. And, it's like the Cold War ended 30 years ago. Like, Russia has been an independent country and a hyper-capitalist country for 30 years, and that's what the Republicans like about it. They saw all those oligarchs go in and just pick up the scraps and profit off of the wreckage of not just Russia, but other former Soviet states, making incredible amounts of money with very few laws. And that's like the Republican dream, is to make tons of money with no regulation. That's it. And so they saw them, wilding out over in the former USSR. Certain people like Paul Manafort were there. They were profiting off of this directly. And I think a lot of Republicans saw that going on, and they were like, yeah, that's awesome. Like, let's get on board with that. Let's make America more like Russia. Like, let's have total corruption corruption that's, institutionalized, that's state sanctioned, and we're already corrupt. I mean, the U.S. was already going in this direction, and it just accelerated to an incredible degree over the last 20 years.
Yeah, and most certainly over the last 4. So now that the former guy is gone, and Biden is making this move, any going back after the Mueller report and bringing those people to justice, or is this just going to be a let sleeping dogs lie?
I mean, they should. They should absolutely, reuse the Mueller report. Obviously the House under Nancy Pelosi did absolutely nothing with it. They didn't even bring up obstruction of justice charges. The main thing I would like to see is that since the Kilimnik connection with Manafort is established yet again, I mean, we already knew it, but it's like even more rigidly defined, I think it's time to bring new charges for Paul Manafort, who was, set free and shouldn't have been because he's extraordinarily dangerous. And, there are a number of things you can bring him up on, but this is one. And, they need to do a real investigation. Like, Mueller did not do a real probe of Donald Trump and his criminal network and his connections with the Kremlin. He left out the entire context of how Trump even got involved with these people to begin with, which goes back 40 years and involves a lot of, high-profile mafia players that the FBI, allegedly was looking at for a while. And then, a couple heads of the FBI, Louis Freeh and William Sessions, then just decided to go work for. They went on to work for the Russian mafia. That's why they've been reluctant to look at all this, because it makes American institutions look terrible. They're either complicit or they are negligent. Like, nobody comes out looking good. But I'm like, too bad. This is my country, and, it's all our country, and it's their job, and they need to actually do it for once. And now we have the opportunity with that, with, the Biden administration, and they should use this time wisely.
Yeah, to steal a Nixon quote, we need to know if our president was a crook. That's where my mind goes. But, I'm looking at this polling data, and a lot of people are like, well, it's a big deal. This stuff is available. You could have gotten it anywhere. What kind of data are they talking about? And when Manafort gave it to Kilimnik, what do you think they did with it? Or what do we know he did with it?
I mean, they gave it to Russian intelligence, and then I think that they, possibly rigged elections in certain states. There were tweets that Paul Manafort, after kind of temporarily going into hiding, made right before the election talking about these states with very narrow margins of victory, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, a couple of others. And those were the ones where this played out. I think it's worth looking at Jenny Cohn's work on whether this election was legitimate. There's all sorts of things they could do. Some of it might have had to do with propaganda operations, which fall more toward the realm of illegality, though not working with a hostile foreign state. I mean, that is illegal. Like, what Paul Manafort did was simply illegal. You can't work with a Kremlin operative to rig a American election, but I have a lot of questions about the legitimacy of the wins in those states, and I've had those questions for 5 years. And people have been very reluctant to answer them because they're like, oh, it throws our election integrity, into question. It's like, yeah, it was already in question. It was in question from the moment that Trump had a press conference in the summer of 2016 and said, Russia, can you get me Hillary Clinton's emails? And then, they basically did. Like, the connection was long established. This was an election that always had major problems. And they just, they wanted to play pretend and pretend everything was okay. And then look what happened. You get a coup and 500,000 Americans dead. That's what happens when you play pretend. Yeah,
excellent point. But I want to go back to the internal data because, as I understand it, and I've worked on campaigns where you have your internal stuff that you don't share with many people. Giving that to a foreign actor, a hostile foreign actor, is really, really kind of bad. I mean, it's horrible, but there's got to be some coordination, in my view. If you're doing that, there's got to be some benefit to turning out what internally you're polling on. Isn't that right?
Well, yeah. I mean, Russia Russia needed Donald Trump to be the president of the United States, and I think that this action between Manafort and Kilimnik is just one of very many things that they did to ensure that kind of win. And, this is something that needs to be examined in a real investigation and presented to the public instead of, just purely through speculation. But it was to every advantage to have an asset as the president of the United States. Like, you couldn't have a greater gift than that. And I always thought that this sort of argument of, Russia just wanted to cause chaos and, mix things up, and that's why they were hacking machines and, various U.S. institutions, and that's why they were hanging out with all the Trump guys in Trump Tower. It's like, no, if they're going to make this effort, it's so that they can make money. It's so that they could get rid of sanctions. It's so that they could avoid the Magnitsky Act, which was sanctioning them. It's so that they could continue their territorial invasions into places like Ukraine with a hostile U.S. Like if Hillary Clinton had won, she would have been adamantly against their Ukrainian invasion. She would have been doing the things Biden's doing now, putting down sanctions, investigating, and so forth. And they really didn't want that, and Trump was tremendously beneficial to them. And it's a logical choice for Russia, like extremely illegal, very, very bad, but logical. It's not hard to see why they did this at all. I mean, the horrible thing is that they got away with it.
And so far they have. Is there any chance the Republican Party comes around, or are they just completely failed or complicit? I mean, because I know the DNC was hacked, and I believe the RNC was as well.
Yes.
I guess I'm not seeing any help from that side of the aisle.
No, I mean, I think at this point it's too late for them. I think in 2017, if people had been more honest about what was happening in 2016 as well, then I think some Republicans would have come clean. I think a lot of the ones that might have come clean just simply dropped out of the party. I think that's like why Paul Ryan ran away, for example, because he knew how dirty this was. He was like, you know what? I'm like going to just call it a day. I mean, it's not like he did anything brave there, but I think he knew it was time to get out. At this point, there's so much dark money and there is so much Kremlin and mafia money mixed in through these proxies that donate to the Republican Party, in particular the NRA, which was a subject of investigation for its work with the Kremlin, that I think they're all contaminated. Like, even if they weren't kind of full-on participants in coordinating with the Kremlin, they very likely receive dirty money. They'd be afraid of a real investigation. And so they're drawing a line. They're acting in lockstep. They're acting like an authoritarian party, which is what they are. And I think it's because quite a lot of them are afraid. But I wouldn't be surprised to see even more Republicans, deciding not to run all of a sudden, just kind of trying to extract themselves from the field. The problem, though, is that you get people, like my senators, like Josh Hawley, and then, of course, Roy Blunt is one of these Republicans who decided not to run. And we've got Eric Greitens back, and they both have these connections to dirty NRA money, to to insurrectionists, to sedition, to crime. That's who's going to come in and take the place of these older Republicans who are trying to extract themselves from the situation. So it's it's a terrible crisis.
I'm right there with you. Sarah, I appreciate you taking some time, sharing some thoughts. Look forward to talking to you again.
Okay, thank you.
Good stuff. Sarah Kendzior. Make sure you check out the Gaslit Nation podcast, also her books, A View from Flyover Country and Hiding in Plain Sight. Good stuff. Quick break, right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1916. That was the day that the American Federation of Teachers was founded at a meeting at the City Club in downtown Chicago. 3 Chicago teachers groups helped to organize the meeting. They were convinced that in order to improve working conditions for teachers, they would need to formally join the labor movement. In 1902, the Chicago Teachers Federation had become the first teachers organization in the nation to join their Central Labor Council. Now they believed it was time to form a national organization. The meeting was also attended by representatives from nearby Gary, Indiana, as well as New York City, Washington, Washington, D.C., and Scranton, Pennsylvania. Just a few weeks after the meeting, the American Federation of Teachers had received its charter from the American Federation of Labor. The new union grew quickly. Within 4 months, 174 locals approached membership of 10,000 educators. But then came a backlash from school boards who did not want to negotiate with the new unions. Board members publicly called into question whether it was appropriate for teachers to unionize. The American Federation of Teachers numbers fell to below 5,000. But the union was not swayed from their cause. They renewed their efforts and again began to grow. In the 1950s, some teachers became the targets of anti-communist hysteria. This highlighted the importance of having a union to protect academic freedom. The 1960s was a time of increased teacher actions and strikes. The American Federation of Teachers more than tripled its membership from 60,000 to 200,000 by the end of the decade. Today, the American Federation of Teachers represents more than 1 million members across the nation. While under increasing attacks, teachers are an important force in today's national labor movement.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
Now, as I said at the beginning, I'm interested and kind of amused at how the right-wing media and Republicans are now trying to be the voices of the working class. Now they care about those poor working schlubs. No policies to help them, no ideas. And as I said at the beginning, if you really want to help, go back to the good socialist president Dwight David Eisenhower's tax code, corporate taxes at 56%. Never going to happen. Go back to the idea of workers being able to collectively bargain. 73% of us say we believe in collective bargaining. There's a good place to start. And oh, by the way, I think an even better place to start would be, as my next guest has pointed out in his new book, Tax the Rich, how lies, loopholes, and lobbyists make the rich even richer. That's why I've asked Morris Pearl to come talk with us. He's the chairman of the Patriotic Millionaires. And, of course, his new book, Tax the Rich, out as we speak. Morris, thanks for taking time for us.
Great to be on your show, Rick.
So, tax the rich. So you're basically saying, hey, tax me.
Well, tax everybody. Obviously, if it was just one person, that'd be easy. But yeah, we believe there's this ridiculous inequality in our country. And a lot of it's because we who are investors pay tax at a much lower tax rate than people who work for a living. It's just not right. It's making it worse.
It is making it worse. But, one of the things you talk about in your book is something that I've talked about for a while, of what is a country? What good's an economy? What's an economy for? And for me, it's about, hey, how do we support our families? How do we make sure that our lives get better, as opposed to a different view, which is hooray for me and the hell with everybody else?
Economy means how the system as a whole in the country allocates things between people. And we're a capitalist system. Those who have more capital invest it and make even more capital. And the way that's worked lately is those who have richer get richer and richer and richer, and everyone else, whatever.
Right. And this is what, I go back to when I talk about Ronald Reagan. We were told trickle-down economics was going to work like this. We give smart people like you and other investors all the money, and they're smart. They know what to do with it. And eventually it will trickle down onto the rest of us like rivers of gold and honey. The trickling down didn't quite happen, but the smart people made a lot of money, and they made it for themselves.
Smart, yes. I don't know where that trickle down idea ever came from. It sounds like appeasement. Like, oh, we have to appease the rich people so they don't get mad at us, or else life will be bad or something. Appeasement just doesn't work. It never worked, and it doesn't work now.
And what we found, the most recent survey done by the Rand Corporation, not a hippie, liberal, left-wing leaning group, is that the working people of this country over the last 45 years have been stiffed out of about $100 trillion in wages, benefits, and all of the other things that had we left the economy alone, they would have earned in these following 45 years.
Yeah, roughly half. And it's just not fair. And it's not like some accidental thing happened. It's like the system has been designed to work this way for years. It's designed to reward investors and people who are rich more than regular people who work for a living. And it's getting worse and worse. And that's why people are marching in the streets. I mean, yes, people are murdered and there's all kinds of terrible things going on too. But basically, it's because there's a whole group of Americans who feel like they're being treated as second or third class citizens, and they're right.
Right. And this is where I think having that moment of saying, you know what, all of this anger, all of this inequality that's been untaken care of, it has bubbled to a point where we have to do something. But we're in a moment where we're so divided. I don't see how we get there. Because, for instance, I'm watching these right-wing talkers, and I'm watching some Republicans talk about how they're now mad at corporate America. Because corporate America had the audacity to hold a call with about 100 CEOs, and they're mad because they're going to let black people vote. Now, look, I've been mad at corporate America for decades because they, in many cases, treat their employees poorly pay them. And I think the Amazon case is a perfect example of that. So welcome to reality. But now they want to throw corporate America, who basically created them, under the bus.
I mean, it's just hypocrisy. But what they really care about is power. And there's a whole group of people that, I mean, I think all they care about is being reelected and being in power and doing stuff and indirectly getting rich because they get to know rich people and work with them. And now there's a new group of people here in New York and other places going to Congress and saying that we have to be democratic and have policies that help everyone do well. And the trick is, the real trick is that it's actually good for everybody. I think the way we're going is not good for rich people either. You know, these things with inequality gets so bad, it's been tried in different countries. In my lifetime in South Africa, it never ends well for the rich people either.
Right.
And so I think that it's actually in everyone's best interests to have progressive policies. I really do.
And look, the reality is your book title, Tax the Rich, is popular. And you look at the infrastructure plan that Joe Biden put forth. A plurality of Americans are in favor of it. They want to see their roads and bridges invested in. But when you add the component, how Biden has chosen to pay for it by raising taxes on corporate America, the popularity goes from 44% to 53% because we believe in investing and paying for it and having corporate America be the ones that help out with that, because I think they benefit the most. Yet our political system is saying, no, we can't raise it just back to 28%. When it was 35, it can only be 25, which is nuts to me.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. We need to do things, and we need to reallocate some money. And yeah, it will result in less rewards for shareholders, people like me, people who own stock in corporations. But if you look at what's happened, even during the pandemic, I'm far wealthier now than I was before the pandemic started, because the stock that I own, the shares of companies that I own, like Amazon and Apple and other companies, have made so much more profits. Part of that's because the reason they made so much more profits is because they pay less taxes than they used to. And that's because of the change in the tax law that came 2 years ago.
Right.
And it's true, if you charge them more taxes, the owners, investors, people like me, will get less profits. That is absolutely true. And I think that would be an okay thing. I really do. So
the question then is where do you draw, like gun control? It's not a matter of if we can have it or if we can't. It's a matter of where you draw the line, because we all agree nobody needs a stealth bomber or a nuclear weapon. Tax, same thing. Where you draw that line. I mean, 0 or 100%, you're still getting nothing. 1953, as I said, the corporate tax rate was 56%. I don't think anyone's advocating for going back to that. But where do you then draw that line? Is it going back to the 35%? Is it the 28%? Where do you, Morris Pearl, put that line?
I don't worry about exactly where it is. Our basic premise is that people who make more money should pay higher tax rates than people who make less money.
Right.
It's that simple. But that's not the way it works today. If you if you have a technical engineer for your broadcast who makes $100,000 a year, he probably pays $8,000-ish in taxes. If I made $100,000 a year, and I could live on $100,000 a year, although I don't, but I probably could manage, I pay zero, not one single penny in taxes, because the capital gains tax rates has a big zero bracket up to almost $100,000. And so it's just ridiculous. I haven't worked for a living in 7 years, but I don't need to because I have enough money. And even the money I do make, I pay a lower tax rate than people who make less money than I do who actually work. Why? Someone claims I'm a job creator or something. No, I haven't created any jobs for anybody. But somehow they have this fiction because the politicians, they spend all of their time sitting in little rooms calling people to make donations to their campaigns. And so they get to know those people really well. And so they get to know how strenuous it is to have to pay taxes on investment income, because those are the people they talk to all day as investors, some of whom don't like to pay taxes. They don't spend all of their time talking to actual people who work for a living.
That's an excellent point. I'm with you. I have a friend who was a former congressman, and he said nobody ever bought my vote, but they bought my ear for 15 minutes. And just as you said, they heard I heard every tale of how taxes are killing my business and taxes are killing me. Like you said, nobody bought my vote, but they got my ear. And again, if that's all I'm hearing, then that changes your thinking a little bit. You're right on. But
those 15 minutes add up.
Absolutely. Actually, as he told me before he left, they spent more than half of their time dialing for dollars.
When my phone rings and it says 430 South Capitol Street, I don't even feel like answering it some days.
I'll have to remember that for if my phone ever rings, although they know better than to call me. So are you advocating for more tax brackets like we had back in the 50s and 60s? Where obviously the bigger your shoulders, the more water you carry back to the cave. Is that the plan?
I think we should have more brackets. Yeah, here in New York State, we just passed a new budget that's instituting brackets at $5 and $10 million levels. So now people who make $5 million will have higher tax rates than people who make $1 million, and even higher at $10 million.
And that's the way it should be. And because again, I go back to this analogy of going back to the cave. Where the people with the bigger shoulders carried more water back to the cave or more whatever. That's just how it went, and we need to be thinking that way today. And I look at today the comment from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who is kind of saying we shouldn't be holding up this infrastructure plan over these SALT deductions that were targeted towards harming blue states. There's no question about that. But she's saying, look, this is just a gift to billionaires, and we shouldn't automatically undo what was done. I'm curious your thoughts on the SALT.
I mean, I'm basically on the side of Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez. I mean, sure, I don't like paying more taxes any more than anyone else does, but I think it's right that this is a provision deducting the state and local income taxes that mainly helps wealthy people much more than non-wealthy people. This actually only affects a minority of people, and it's the people who have higher incomes that it affects here in New York and other places. And I mean, it's not just billionaires. That's a fault. I mean, that's not completely true. It's actual normal millionaires too. And frankly, here in New York, people who are not even millionaires, but who own expensive houses, which some people do without being a millionaire.
And we can have a conversation on how you cut that out. Because look, I have friends who are union plumbers in New York City, and they've had a house for generations. It's appraised in value. They're paying above $10,000 a year in taxes, and it is hurting them. We could make this income based if we wanted to, couldn't we?
It'd be okay with me. I mean, frankly, I think that those people are paying a wealth tax, and they've been paying a wealth tax for generations. And union teachers on Long Island can often own a house worth millions of dollars if they bought it, or their parents bought it in the 1920s or something. But they've been paying a wealth tax for years. And I think it's time for some of the proposals Elizabeth Warren has been talking about, that everyone should pay a wealth tax, not just homeowners but everyone else too, including investors whose wealth is not in their homes, but in their investment portfolios.
So let me ask you a last line of questioning. Outside of the book, getting the book and reading that, tax the rich, outside of taxing the rich, how do we unrig this system? How do we get the ball rolling to a more fair, egalitarian society where we got the wealthy paying a bigger share of what they've got?
Look, we have taxtherich.com, patrioticmillionaires.org. You can go to our websites. But really what you should do is when people are running for Congress, ask them what they think about taxes. And remember that when you decide how to vote.
Well, the Republicans have made their bones on this. I mean, Grover Norquist and his pledge has basically strangleheld the Republican Party. We can never raise taxes. In fact, I look at Mitt Romney, who, we need to have fees, and he never raised taxes as governor of Massachusetts. Just feed like 500 times he raised fees, never taxes.
And that makes it worse because it's regular working people that pay more of those fees than the billionaires pay. We need progressive tax policy, not charging everyone the same thing. That just isn't right.
Yeah,
and that's what we need. We need to change that.
No, I mean, it seems like common sense. So why is it so hard to get to that point? Because I got friends who are making decent living, $60,000, $80,000 a year, who still think that they're going to pay an estate tax.
Well, maybe if they live to be 1,000 years old and save all their money, but no. I mean, estate taxes are paid by people who have over $20 million, $23 odd million for a couple. But the Republicans have been convincing everyone that, Democrats want to take all your money away. And because really, they want to protect the rich and tax the regular middle class people. And it's just the opposite of the way I think that it should be. But somehow they've been saying those things for years and gotten people to believe that, taking money away, that's bad.
No, and forgetting the fact that how we built the most prosperous working class in history and the most profitable time in our country's history was through a more equitable distribution of the wealth that was created.
The guy who runs this, bus tour about job creators, Ken Langone, he has a big hospital named after him. He's such a generous guy. And he built his business. He was one of the founders of Home Depot, the hardware and building supplies business all over the world. He paid a tax rate of 70%. And he lived in New York City and he never moved anywhere. And he built a huge business when his tax rate was 70%. It didn't dissuade him. It didn't make him want to put his money under the mattress and not invest it in building a multi-billion-dollar business. And even today, people are moving into the United States. People are moving to places with higher taxes because those are the places that have stuff where you can build businesses. Those are the places where you have workers who make enough money to be able to afford to shop in your businesses. Those are the places that are growing. High tax places. New York, San Francisco, Los Angeles. Those are the growing cities where people are moving into to build their careers.
There you go. The book, Tax the Rich. All in favor of that. Make sure you pick that up, patrioticmillionaires.org, the website. Lies, loopholes, and lobbyists make the rich even richer by Morris Pearl. Morris, I appreciate you taking time for me.
Thank you, Rick. Great to be in your show.
Good stuff. Let's take a quick break. Right back. Stick around and listen to The Rick Smith Show.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1947. It was opening day of a truly new baseball season. 14,000 black baseball fans had come to Ebbets Field in Brooklyn, making up more than half of the crowd. They let out an exuberant cheer as Jackie Robinson, the first ball player to break the color barrier, ran onto the field. But do you know what led to that historic moment? For years, black community leaders and writers at black newspapers had led the call demanding baseball baseball's integration. The New York Trade Union Athletic Association also joined the fight. The TUAA organized sports programs for 300,000 union members. In 1940, they launched the Committee to End Jim Crow Baseball. That July, they hosted a labor sports carnival at the New York World's Fair. The theme for the event was Ending Jim Crow Baseball. Racially integrated teams played a series of baseball games. The committee collected more than 10,000 signatures to end baseball's long system of segregation. Civil rights and union leaders held pickets at baseball stadiums in New York and Chicago, where they collected more than 1 million signatures. This grassroots community organizing brought attention to the racial barrier erected around America's pastime. Finally, their efforts paid off when the part owner and general manager of the Brooklyn Dodgers, Branch Rickey, signed Jackie Robinson to play for the Dodgers. Robinson often faced discrimination from other teams and fans during his career. But despite this harassment, he was named Rookie of the Year in 1947, National League MVP in 1949, and was named to the All-Star team 6 times. And so, each year on this day, Major League Baseball celebrates Jackie Robinson Day. Players wear the number 42 in honor of Jackie Robinson. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
An old political truism notes that where there's a will, there are 1,000 won'ts. And what a hurricane of won'ts swirled out of Washington's power centers in March to pummel Joe Biden. Corporate lobbyists and their congressional hirelings howled at him for declaring that he would seek a tax increase on corporations to pay for the essential overdue job of repairing and expanding our nation's antiquated, dilapidated infrastructure. Blowhard Mitch McConnell, the GOP Senate leader, blustered that poor corporate America should not be singled out to bear this burden. But wait, Mitch singled out the corporate giants in 2017 to receive a massive cut in their tax rate. So even with a slight increase now, they'll pay much less than regular people. Also, the giants worm loopholes in the law to cut their taxes further. Indeed, 55 of the biggest, most profitable corporations paid zero in U.S. income taxes last year. As Bernie Sanders points out, if you paid $120 for a pair of Nike shoes, you paid more to Nike than it paid in federal income taxes over the past 3 years, while it made $4 billion in profits. Mitch and his fellow hypocrites cynically profess that they support restoring America's infrastructure, but, he says, asking our corporate political funders to pay more is not going to get support from our side. So who do they want to pay for it? You. Working people and the poor. Senator Roy Blunt, a Missouri Republican and a leader of Mitch's team, points to putting more user fees on drivers and adding taxes on consumers as the way to go. This is Jim Hightower saying, to see a list of other major corporate scofflaws who've been pocketing billions in profits yet paying zilch for the upkeep of America, go to the Institute on Taxation and Economic Policy, itep.org. The Hightower Radio Lowdown is made possible by you lowdowners who subscribe to our monthly newsletter, The Hightower Lowdown. You know who you are. Thank you.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So today I'm checking the Twitter news. And look, let me start off by saying I'm not a fan of social media platforms banning people. I'm not. I think speech should be free, and there should be more of it. And I think, if you say something stupid, more of us should be shouting you down to tell you how stupid you are. But today it turns out that the guy who runs Project Syphilis, this James O'Keefe, has been banned from the Twitters for violating its policies on manipulation and spam. You break the rules, it's a private function. Out the door you go. And here to share some thoughts on, that and all of the other craziness going on this fine day, I've asked our good friend Sarah Burris to come talk with us. Sarah is a reporter over at RawStory, does incredible work. Highly suggest checking it out, rawstory.com. Sarah, thanks for taking time for us.
Project Syphilis. Sorry.
Isn't that what it is?
About that. through the whole intro, I've just been like, oh my God. That explains so much. It really does.
Oh, did I say that? Did I say that out loud? Like I said, I'm not comfortable with banning people from Twitter and stuff like that. I wasn't even a big fan of pitching Trump off, even though I'm happy they did, because at least toned things down. Thoughts?
I'm not surprised that he has like a whole bunch of sock puppet accounts that are used for all the commenting and stuff, because that explains why all of my social media stuff is full of all of these really weird people who have like no pictures and no information or attacking me on every platform.
Yeah,
so
they got names like XZK 579 1347 68, and you go, who's ever going to remember to log in with that?
Right? That's going to be somebody's social security number or their phone number or their mom's phone number or both.
Yeah, I was happy to see that, because I know you had a run-in with them, a bunch of idiots. But
literally.
But it is what it is. Also, there's a call now for Tucker Carlson to be banned from Facebook. Again, I'm not a big fan of banning people, but he did say something kind of stupid. He did say, quote, a few years ago, Bree Newsom trespassed at the Capitol in South Carolina and ripped down the flag. No, she took down a Confederate flag, which is not the flag. It's not the American flag. It's a symbol of hate, a symbol of treason. That's what she took down. So at least get that part right there, Tucker.
And she didn't break anything down. She basically walked up to the flagpole and started climbing it.
Which very few people can do.
Right? I feel like we should be celebrating her physical prowess.
We should put her in charge of the President's Council on Physical Fitness.
Yes, so much more interesting than Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah.
And far more engaging. So yeah, no, I think that Tucker. I mean, it's not. I don't really care about him attacking Bree Newsom. She's amazing and can totally take care of herself and can probably take down Tucker along with other flags.
Oh.
So, but his really weird racist theories that he's spouting, that's where stuff kind of gets a little, that's like, wait a minute, you're going to start preaching white supremacist ideology on Fox News? Like, are you really that desperate for ratings, Tucker?
Isn't that what they've been doing in the last decade, 20 years?
Well, for the last decade, I feel like he's kind of been using these little, little weird earworms and catchphrases and stuff that's only really known
little dog whistle
for that community. Yeah, and so like now he's just being like, he's taking the hood off. He's just blatant about the immigration white replacement theory. Like somehow, if an immigrant comes into the United States, a white person dies. I don't really understand how it works. It seems like the counter to the ringing a bell and a fairy gets its wings kind of a thing.
Yeah,
it just seems like the opposite of that.
It's crazy.
But I don't understand. Yeah, it's completely insane. Have you ever seen somebody just spontaneously combust because a brown person came in? Like, oh my gosh.
No, but in college I had hoped a friend who was lighting something would.
There you go. I think we all have somebody that we know that would be better off if they would spontaneously combust.
No, he was trying to light gas coming out of his backside, and I was hoping he'd explode. That's what happens when you're drunk and at a party. Much like Matt Gaetz. And
that's how you get on the evening news, right there.
Right there. That's all you got to do is blow that up. But the weird thing is I look at someone like Tucker and I look at the right-wing mouthpieces right now. We talked about this at the beginning. Right now they're trying to make this pivot to saying now they care about working people. And yet they've been the biggest obstacle for progress in my lifetime. They've been propping corporate America up for decades, basically pandering to corporate America's every whim. Whenever they wanted to steal and rob and cheat and pollute, they were right there. But hey, black people voting, can't have that.
Oh, and we've got, Ted Cruz and Mike Lee and Josh Hawley, who are just infuriated with corporations, to which I say, awesome. then let's use this as an opportunity to raise the corporate tax rate to 28 and pay for the infrastructure bill.
We got to go way up. We got to go GOP socialist. We got to go back to the good old days of Dwight David Eisenhower. 56% corporate tax rate.
I feel like that would really show those corporations.
That would really punish them. And then we could take that money and repay all the wages that they've stolen over the last 45 years from working people, and all the benefits and all the retirement that they've stolen and gutted over the last 45 years, and make working people whole. You want to be the party of the working class? Do something that's going to help. Just don't blather off your lips and play Tokyo Rose like our buddy here, Tokyo Teddy Matthews.
Yeah, this is something where the Republicans, this is a new territory for them. So I feel like that's one of the reasons that they really don't quite understand, what's happening here in terms of how you speak to working people, how you reach out to working people, what working people care about, what families actually need. These are really hard things for them to understand because it's never been something that they've had to deal with before. They can tell you everything about the corporate tax rate.
Right. No, but here's the thing. This is what gets me. I was listening to the latest Milli Vanilli to sit in Rush Limbaugh's seat because they're all trying to be Rush, all trying to do the lip sync. And they've actually got the Rush clips. They're playing the tracks right there. So I'm listening to the reading going on, and I'm listening to them badmouth, corporate America because, hey, they did this bad thing. They want black people to vote. And in my mind, I'm going, the time I heard Rush Limbaugh speak in person was at a talkers conference. And he said, it's all about the sale. Radio is all about the sale. The most important person in the room, the salesman, because that's how you get paid. That's where the money comes from. So to hear these people literally biting the hand that's been feeding them for decades is hysterical to me.
But really, at this point, they've had so many people leave, so many advertisers leave, that at this point, all they really have left is Mike Lindell and adjustable rate mortgages.
And he's going to be bankrupt soon.
Yeah, so at some point you're going to run out of. It's going to be, the voting systems pillow, and they're probably not going to be running any ads on Fox News.
My prison pillow.
I mean, this is part of the whole campaign that's been going on from anti-Fox people and Media Matters for the last 15 years, for as long as I have been in politics.
Yep.
And so they don't really have much left to lose, because it's not like, the good people at Amazon are going to show some kind of video or commercial on their airwaves. It's not going to happen.
No,
why bother?
And like I said at the beginning, you want to show me that you're on the side of the working people? How about you get those Republicans in the Senate to go, 73% of people surveyed by Politico and Morning Consult said they're in favor of collective bargaining. How about you?
Yeah.
How about you get that PRO Act passed to give us the ability to collectively bargain? How about you put your words on the line and actually do something instead of whine, complain, and grieve and play the victim? How about we try that for a change? I know it's radical. I know it's never been done. Just might work.
You're on fire today, dude.
I'm ticked off.
Drink coffee?
No, I don't drink coffee.
I know.
Yeah, a truck driver that doesn't drink coffee. You figure that out. Let's move down the road. Another favorite story of mine. You got that, did you? Good on you. Evidently, one of the Capitol rioters, a geophysicist, who allegedly was beating up the police as the police were trying to help people who were injured. I guess he tried to escape to Switzerland. He will now wait in jail until his trial. I think that's funny.
I think that's hilarious. I don't know how you calculate the physics equation for thinking that you're going to be able to get away and escape to Switzerland after beating the hell out of a cop, but good on you for trying that. That would be theoretical physics.
Yeah, I just, it was one of those things where you go, and the way they said he tried to do it was really hysterical because it was never going to work.
Again, bless your heart. Bless your heart. There are a lot of these people, and there are going to be more of them, and every story is going to be, just as weird or weirder. Yeah, a lot of these people are going to be hauled out of their mother's basements, and just like Trump used to say about liberals. And
but here's the thing that gets me, and it gets crazier and crazier. Look, I get if you're a traitor, and you've committed treason, and you've done the things that this guy did, I get the idea. I got to get out of Dodge. I get that. Wholly get it. And maybe if I were that horrible, I would do it too. But I look at someone like this right-wing pastor from my home city of Cleveland, who's come up and said, no, that whole January 6th thing, no, that was the Democrats that did that.
Man, and he's not the only one. There are a bunch of Republicans who are trying to come up with the same philosophy, this bizarre theory that, Democrats were the ones behind it. Antifa was the one who started it. And I'm just waiting. I keep waiting for somebody who is not a Trump supporter to be arrested. But every single one of them, over 377 at this point, maybe the physicist is 78. They're all Trump supporters. They're all Republicans. They're all conservatives. So show me the Antifa person. Yeah, I'm waiting for it.
See, this is where if I'm one of them, while I'm sitting in jail, and maybe the geophysicist will figure this out while he's sitting in prison waiting his trial. Maybe he goes, wait a second. Maybe if I pull a flip on them, since I half-handed way try to get to Switzerland, which they were never going to let you in. Maybe I go, no, I was Antifa. I need BLM to come help me out and play that kind of a card just for, giggles, if nothing else, because you're still going to jail.
Yeah, I feel like somebody who's going to look at his social media accounts are probably going to out that as a lie. Yeah. But I mean, that's the thing, is all of these people have a paper trail. And the Justice Department has been looking at it.
Yeah, they did broadcast and record their own treason for all historical memory to be right there.
Man, how arrogant do you have to be?
It's either stupid or arrogant. So I've asked this question a bunch of times. Which is it? Is it you were completely stupid and didn't realize, they can save this stuff now, and they can turn your phone on now. They can track your every movement now. Or is it arrogance? I don't care, because Donald Trump will pardon all of us. He'll make us whole. He's our guy.
He told us to come here. I'm here because he told me to. Yeah. Therefore, he's the one you should arrest.
In fact,
right? Is that the logical conclusion there?
Yeah, in fact, I would take the stand and said, not only did he tell us to be here, not only tell us to go, he said he was going to lead us.
Yeah, he did. He absolutely did. He said that, he would walk with them all the way to the Capitol, and then, his bone spurs started acting up, and that was all she wrote.
You stole that one, the bone spurs. There you go. Ba-dum-bum.
I'll be here all week.
But here's the scary part in all this. The Washington Post had released an analysis of evidently over the course of, I guess it was the 78 minutes that all this went on January 6th, Capitol Police called for backup 17 times and were ignored 17 times.
And it wasn't the whole riot didn't take place over 70 minutes. This was the 78 minutes from the moment that they tried to breach the Capitol to the point when they did breach the Capitol. It took 78 minutes for that to happen. And over the course of all of that, the Post took all of these recordings of police radios and charted not just what the officer was saying and what they were asking for, but where they were, where they'd been relocated to, and showed videos of what they were facing at the time. And that just blew my mind. I mean, that is like a data nerd's dream right there. Is you can finally see, the chief is right here. He's got a massive crowd of people coming at me, and you can hear the fear in his voice when he starts, rattling off numbers 1033 or whatever, and saying, the line is fallen. And that stuff gives you chills, because you're like, oh my God, I got freaked out, that one time some dude tried to make some comment about me wearing a mask, I can't imagine being a cop and seeing this just massive people with poles coming at you, and knowing that there were, over 9,000 of them and 90 of you.
It's interesting you brought up the polls, because, I've gone to rallies around the Capitol, and they never let you bring anything that isn't a cardboard tube.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to bring sticks or anything.
You can hold the flag or wear the flag around you, but if you bring a pole, they're not gonna let you in.
And again, it's amazing to me that was allowed to happen, and it's one of those things that I, because you saw the people actually stabbing the policemen with these flags. And, immediately my mind goes to, I've been to these things in the past. They never let you come with anything but paper tubes. And how did they get that? And how was that allowed? So for me, this is a policy that came from above, that they were very hands off. And I think they did it. And I hate to sound conspiratorial, but all angles lead to, they were okay with this happen. They allowed this to happen. They did nothing to stop it. And Trump's own words encouraged it. So someone needs to be held accountable above just these schmucks who showed up and got all riled into a tizzy and got their panties all wadded up, and did really dumb criminal stuff. It's got to go much higher.
It does. And the hearing that happened today was sort of a shortened hearing because they had to go vote. But one of the hearings that happened today was with the Inspector General, who did the full report about the Capitol Police. And what he talked about is that the Capitol Police Board, are the ones who hire and who do regulations for the Capitol Police and, all of their stuff. It is the architect of the Capitol, the Senate Sergeant of Arms, and the House Sergeant of Arms. And one of the Republicans on the committee today tried to make it into a political thing where they were like, well, the Democrats are the ones who are in control of the House and the Senate and all of this stuff. And they're the ones that are hiring these people. And Zoe Lofgren cut in and was like, okay, wait a second. The architect of the Capitol is appointed by the president. So that person was a Trump appointee, and the architect or the Sergeant of Arms in the Senate, it was appointed by Mitch McConnell, so that was a Republican guy. So really, your problem is with yourself. This is what we're dealing with.
Yeah,
I mean, they're really trying to make this stuff up as they go along and thinking that they can get away with it. Like, we don't know the facts, except we do.
Yeah, absolutely. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show here with Sarah Burris, reporter over at RawStory. Make sure you check out her work at rawstory.com. I wanted to get your thoughts. Turn the corner a little bit. Still in Congress, or maybe not for long. Who knows? But evidently, the Matt Gaetz gate is becoming very, very interesting. At late night, Colbert evidently had the statement that the Afghan war is so old that it can't even date Matt Gaetz, which I thought was kind of funny, to be honest.
It's funny because it's true.
Also you got Jimmy Kimmel going after, his statement of, if you want women, if you want something done, hire a woman. That kind of resonates in a whole different fashion too. I agree.
It has a whole different meaning at this point. Like the fact that he is dealing with allegations of prostitution of minors, and then he went to a women's event and said, if you want something done, you hire a woman. It's like, oh no, pull that back in.
No, I see. I think that's perfectly fine in that environment, because I guarantee you there was still a woman in that crowd wearing a Trump grab me by the you-know-what shirt.
Yeah, probably. I
mean, it's a weird world we live in. When, yes, sexually harass me, sexually abuse me, yes.
Right. I wonder how that would really work out for them.
That's pure desperation.
Oh, burn.
Oh, that was wrong, wasn't it? Bit too far. I apologize. Actually, I meant it. Never mind. I didn't want to spend too much time on Gaetz, but I don't care about his sexual proclivities. I don't care if he hired escorts. The underage stuff, absolutely. If he had anything to do with an underage person, straight to prison you go. I'm sure you'll get a date there. But all of the other stuff, the drugs and all the other nonsense with consenting adults, not my concern. The FEC claims, all the money that he spent on travel, quote unquote travel. And last night we had Scott Dworkin on the program talking about, looking at, all of these charges for $1,000 here, $1,000 there, where it's not for lodging, it's for booze.
Yeah. And that's a problem. That's when you start looking at federal crimes. And this is one of the things that happened with Michael Cohen, is that payoff to Stormy Daniels is a campaign cost.
Yep.
And trying to hide that from the SEC doesn't generally work out that well, because somebody's going to go through that stuff. They're going to figure it out. Yeah. And so I'm curious to see what happens with Mr. Gates.
Yeah, I'm hoping for a lengthy prison sentence, because he's the kind of snotty that deserves it. Although, to be honest, he is the man from Florida. He is, when you go look, man from Florida, there he is in the dictionary.
The epitome of Florida man. But the entitlement, the like rich boy kind of persona, that's the kind of thing you just want to slap down.
I'm right there with you. Last thing I wanted to get into, it's kind of personal. You're one of my favorite people because you're really a good person. And I really mean that. Man. The stories of talking about your grandfather and all the work that you did, I think was incredible, and helping them pay for his nursing care. I always thought that was an incredible thing, and I always thought you should have never had to do it. And I'm looking at the fact that Joe Biden has included in this Build Back Better plan, the American Jobs Plan, $400 billion investment into senior care and long-term living care for people much like your grandfather, so that you wouldn't have had to have done that. But I give you credit for absolutely for doing it. I'm curious your thoughts on Biden's proposal.
I do think it's important. It's not going to be enough, and it's something that this is a system-wide issue. This is where we as a country are not prepared, because you're looking at baby boomers, which is the largest generation so far, and as they age, it's going to be a really heavy lift for the country to be able to handle elder care for that many people. And it's not just folks who are on Social Security, it's people who, when they get Alzheimer's, you're going to need an advanced level of care, and that stuff gets really expensive, as I can attest.
Yeah, even if you can't take care of yourself. Look, I've seen numbers on how much nursing homes cost, anywhere from $4,000 to $8,000 a month.
Yes, depending on where you are in the country. Yeah, I mean, I was paying on. So what they did is they charge a flat rate for the room that you have, and then they charge nursing care, and that nursing care goes up on a point system depending on how much care that they need. So when he first came in, he was a level 1 because he really didn't need any help with anything. But as things got worse, he went up to like a level 3 and a level 4, and then you're starting to talk like on a long month, because they charge by the day with 31 days. Those are the months where I'm looking for like a couple $1,000, because it's getting close to $4,000. Wow. And I mean, and that's in Oklahoma. And that was not the best facility by a stretch. There was a place down the street that we looked at that apparently had incredible food, but it was going to charge, like $3,500 just for the room. And I was like, well, that's not happening. So there are a lot of state facilities, but there aren't enough of them. So if you have Medicare or Medicaid that's paying for some of this stuff, the problem is that there just aren't enough beds.
No,
so
and
if
this
you're
is
lucky.
And this is where the reason I bring this up is here in my neighborhood, there's a Save Claremont movement going on because the county commissioners here want to sell off the county nursing home. Again, the privatization schemes of privatizing our nursing homes the stories have been horrible. Patient care goes down, workers' wages get slashed, benefits get slashed, all bad except profit for whoever bought it. And politicians, you get to go, we didn't raise your taxes. But again, you got to know who's important here. So the reason I brought this up to you, because I know this is something that's important to you, the reality is I think most of us, and the polling bears this out, 88% of Democrats, 72% of independents, 55% of Republicans support the idea that Joe Biden's put forth. So I think this is one of those things, and I know it's not traditional infrastructure, but it's something we need to do.
But it is kind of infrastructure, because you're talking about what people need to live, what people need to survive in their states. And because this is a state facility or a federally paid plan or benefit or whatever, like that's when you start looking at how can we make this more efficient and more affordable. I mean, I would like to see as we move on, there's so many houses that are available. It would be great if you could have people in a group buy a house and then have one or two nurses that are just there to help them. Like, there are alternatives that we can use to nursing home and nursing care. It's just trying to come up with the ideas and the solutions.
Absolutely. And this is where I've said for years, I get flack from the left about this all the time. I don't believe in welfare programs. I don't believe in handouts. I believe in jobs programs. And this would be the perfect place to put people who need jobs, to help seniors, to go to the doctors, get the groceries, clean up, make dinner, those simple things that can be done, help them in their daily activities. We could give people the dignity of work and pay them a reasonable wage and do away with all of the nonsense that we get from the right talking about lazy people and all of that. We give people jobs. This has always been my view. And I think it's something we can do.
And it's something we could model off of what's happening at the VA right now. Just up the road from my house is a veterans care facility for elderly veterans. You have to be approved to get in there. God knows the waiting list is a mile long. But they have all facilities for exactly that purpose. And we could use what they have learned to create something similar.
There you go. But Sarah, I appreciate the time. And I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but you truly are.
No,
truly are one of my favorite people. And I appreciate you taking time for us.
Thank you. Have a good weekend.
You as well. Our good friend Sarah Burris. Make sure you check out her work over at RawStory. She does incredible stuff. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
Saving work in America, one show at a time. The Rick Smith Show.
The annual threat assessment describes an array of threats we are facing in the coming year.
U.S. Global Threat Assessment warns climate change is a clear and present danger.
Japan insists the water is safe.
Fukushima's radioactive water to be dumped into the ocean. Plus, to combat climate change, France moves to ban short flights.
How does that combat climate change? Don't tell me. All of those stories and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
Ecological degradation and a changing climate will continue to fuel disease outbreaks, threaten food and water security, exacerbate political instability and humanitarian crises.
Okay, yeah, but other than that, why is climate change a problem? This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, I know you've got the global threat assessment, blah, blah, blah. I'm only interested in why banning short flights helps climate change, but I guess we'll get there at the very end.
Yes, we will.
That's what I thought.
In its latest Global Threat Assessment report, the U.S. intelligence community cautions that man-made climate change remains a looming and growing global threat to U.S. interests at home and abroad. In the first hearing in 2 years on the annual Global Threat Report, Director of National Intelligence Avril Haines warned the Senate Intelligence Committee this week that global warming risks further destabilizing a world shaken by the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic and will drive migration.
Ecological degradation and a changing climate will continue to fuel disease outbreaks, threaten food and water security, exacerbate political instability and humanitarian crises. Warmer weather can generate direct, immediate impacts, for example, through more intense, frequent, and variable extreme weather events, in addition to driving conflicts over scarce natural resources. And the changing climate, conflict, and economic deprivation will drive vulnerable populations from their homes, heightening humanitarian needs and increasing the risk of political upheaval.
That sounds like a problem.
In other news, despite coronavirus shutdowns around the world, levels of carbon dioxide and methane in the atmosphere rose in 2020. Methane racked up its highest year-over-year increase since records began in 1983. And that matters because methane traps much more heat in the atmosphere than carbon dioxide on shorter timescales. Part of the surge is attributed to the massive build-out of natural gas infrastructure worldwide.
What's the other part?
The other part is from biological sources like wetlands and cattle.
Cow farts.
Yep.
I knew it.
Atmospheric CO2 levels have reached their highest point in 3.6 million years. The last time atmospheric CO2 levels were this high, sea level was 78 feet higher.
Yeah, I remember that.
The government of Japan this week announced that 2 years from now, it will intentionally discharge into the Pacific Ocean more than 300 million gallons of radioactively contaminated wastewater that has accumulated over the past decade since the meltdown of the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant, because it is running out of room to store it. Japan says the treated water is within safe levels, but critics warn that radioactive isotopes in the water could potentially contaminate the marine food chain.
And that is exactly how we got Godzilla. I'm just saying. What are you doing, Japan?
China's foreign minister challenged Japan's deputy prime minister that if the treated radioactive water is safe, then, quote, please drink it.
Oh, God.
Here in the U.S., President Biden's first budget has been sent to Congress, reflecting his spending priorities for fiscal year 2022, which include undoing much of the damage done by the Trump administration. Biden's budget seeks massive increases in funding for the Environmental Protection Agency and for clean energy innovation, research, and deployment, electrifying the federal vehicle fleet, environmental justice initiatives, and climate and weather science research.
It's the undoing.
More good news. The U.S. solar industry had a record year in 2020 despite the COVID-19 pandemic slowing down some projects. That's due mostly to solar's increasing cost competitiveness with fossil fuels.
2020 was the best year ever.
Finally, France is moving to cut more emissions and clean up air pollution. The French National Assembly voted to ban airline flights within France where there are alternatives that take less than 2.5 hours, like the country's high-speed train system.
So there'll be less flights, so there'll be less emissions from those flights.
Exactly.
But won't that mean people use more cars, which makes things worse?
No, they'll take the high-speed train system. And it's offering car owners an incentive to trade in their aging, polluting clunkers with a $3,000 incentive to use toward the purchase of an electric bike.
How much does an electric bike cost?
About $3,000.
Good deal. For much more on all of those stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, please check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. Find, follow, and share us planet-wide, even in France, on the Facebooks and the Twitters, at Green News Report. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So some fun today in congressional hearing. Jim Jordan lost his mind. Ohio Representative Jordan demanding Anthony Fauci give him a date when we can be careless again. And it was funny, just to hear, when can we go back to church? Well, people are going to church. You just have to be somewhat sane and rational. You know when we can go back to normal or what we think was normal? When you start doing the right thing. Just a thought. And when you stop telling people it's all a hoax and it's all nonsense. Although, I got to be honest, he did admit that 560,000 people died because of it. He did admit to that. I guess it doesn't mean anything to him, but he did admit to it. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on the craziness in our capital, I've asked our good friend Bob Ney to come talk with us. Bob's a former Ohio Congressman and political analyst extraordinaire. Bob, thanks for taking time for us.
Thanks. And who knows more about craziness in the Capitol than me? I'm one of them. So, as John Boehner says, crazy town, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, look, I've been listening to a little bit of right-wing radio today in the last couple of days because I've been doing some driving. And, what I find hysterical is everything's Washington's fault, and they get to blame everything on Washington while then blaming all of the poor people around them. It's very right. Interesting. Grievance, hate rate.
I thought Democratic Chairman Clyburn handled it quite well, and he always does. I served with him in the Congress. He's chair of the committee where Jim Jordan and Dr. Fauci went back and forth, and I just thought he handled it quite well as chair.
Yeah.
Very calm.
See, I don't think I could be that calm. I've said this before. People have gone, hey, you should run for Congress. You should run for something. And I'm going, I'm the last guy you want to see in that office because I would probably reach across the table and try and strangle somebody, which would not be good.
Well, yeah, but you know what? It'd probably be okay back home. They might vote for you again. Well, I'm telling you.
That's true. We'll see how that plays out. I wanted to get your thoughts on the Chauvin trial. Have you been following this at all? As the defense rested?
I followed, some of it. Yes, and the defense, has rested in the trial. And I thought some of the, some key testimony, was when the one policeman came and talked about how, the length of the chokehold shouldn't have been, for that period of time, and the experts that they brought in. But both prosecution and defense have rested their cases, is what's happened. So, now Judge, I think it's Cahill, was the judge, told the members of the jury that they should return to court at 9 a.m. I think it's would be on Monday, and trial has now went its course, and they'll be prepared to hear the closing arguments. Right. What'll happen then?
And then early, I guess Monday afternoon they should get the case, and we'll see how long it would be to decide. And I got to be honest, I've watched as much of it as I can, and I watched more of the. Honestly, I've watched more of the defense's presentation because I want to see what they're. Right. I see from my eyes what happened. I want to see how they justify it. And bringing in that Fowler, as their expert, who basically said, no, the knee in the back didn't mean anything. He probably would have died anyway because he was a big guy with a big heart, and he was sucking in gas fumes or whatever it was. And I'm going, I'm not buying that.
Right, and then they had the medical expert who, addressed the issues of the plaque, in the heart, et cetera, and the condition, but then said that what caused the whole domino effect of the heart to operate that way was the knee on the neck.
Yep.
That was the medical expert. Now, Chauvin is charged with second-degree murder, third-degree murder, and second-degree manslaughter in the death. Now, if he's convicted, and this is where I think it's going to be interesting to see if he's convicted of the most serious charge, he would face 10.5 years to 15 years in prison, but he could receive a lesser term, depends on which charge, he's convicted of, and whether he, serves concurrent or not time. So actually the sentencing, I think, is going to be the part that's probably, or could be, I should say, Rick, controversial.
My friend Curry would be very happy at your assumption that he's going to be found guilty.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's why I am. I'm talking as if he will be, found guilty. I don't know. Who knows what a jury does? I think he'll be found guilty. I think the question will be is the amount of time served, and that will become the issue, obviously, of the day, and the issue that's going to stir a lot of emotion.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this goes. I wanted to get your thoughts on Russia. The president has gone forward with some sanction ideas. Because evidently we now find out what we knew all along, that Paul Manafort gave Konstantin Kilimnik internal polling data from the Trump campaign. We knew that. I guess we've known that all along. That's now something that now they're putting a little foot down for cybersecurity and for election interference. Your thoughts?
Well, there were some thoughts from former Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, who had dealt with Putin, for quite a few years when he ran the oil company. And he used to say that, this is Tillerson, that sanctions did little, or if anything, to deter the Russian leader. And that may be true in itself, but the U.S. and our allies have imposed some sanctions against Russia, basically, I think, every year for probably the last 7 years. And Russia has still continued to occupy the Crimea and eastern Ukraine. It still has supported Assad. It has still interfered with our elections. But these sanctions now by President Biden's administration will have some new standing, Rick, That's going to be in the cyber realm. So the U.S. government is formally accusing Russia's intel service, the SolarWinds hack situation, and it's identified, where it's going to go after it. So there are some sanctions that are going to be new. Now, one thing that we haven't been able to sanction, the Biden administration is going to have a tough time, and that's Nord Stream 2 is what it's called. And that's complicated because Germany's involved with that pipeline, and that is a toughie to go after. But the bottom line is I think that the sanctions are a good thing to do. Will it totally change Putin's behavior? Probably not, but it still is most likely worth the effort that they're doing.
No, it's one of those things. I agree. It's not because we're not going to get into a shooting war. Nobody wants that.
Correct.
But it's saying, hey, we know.
Right. Exactly. And it's like with Iran and sanctions. We've sanctioned in Iran. We've sanctioned everything except the air that's breathed, and that's why we had the nuclear accord under President Obama to actually step into the diplomatic realm. And I think we can look towards the diplomatic realm here, too, because the second path that the president is taking is he is asking that he and Putin have a direct, and you reported on this the other day, a direct summit. He could be criticized for that, but, again, why not? President Biden wouldn't be going to the summit to give in, be going to the summit to at least communicate. So sanctions followed up by direct diplomatic communication.
Yeah,
I think it's a two-path.
Supposedly during the height of the Cold War, we had the red bat phone in the White House.
Sure,
so
absolutely.
that you can't stop talking. You can disagree. You can be adversaries. You can go at each other, but you got to keep talking about it. That's
right. So it's a two-path for President Biden, and I think that it'll be interesting to see what happens. There may be some movement with Putin. We'll know.
Yeah, I'm curious, how vulnerable do you think we are to their hacks? One of the things I talked about with our friend Sarah Kendzior earlier was that, they don't know we don't really know how far in the Russian hackers got into our electric grids and into our the dams and, our infrastructure, how deep they're into our treasury. I guess we don't know. How bad do you think it is?
I think it's pretty serious. There's two, at least in my opinion, and going back to the days I served in Congress, and at least the information I had then, I think is probably pretty accurate now, and that's that there's a couple of paths here, too, that the Russians take. One being the Russian government with, trying to infiltrate at all levels. When we were in Congress, I was overseeing our, security and technology section. We regularly received hack warnings, and I would get them in my office in the morning, and that Iran and China and Russia were the three, way back then, in 2001, 2002, et cetera, were the ones that were trying to hack into our computers. We would send, actually, by the way, formal protests, and the Chinese would answer, they're teenagers, how they would answer it, and the Russians just didn't answer. So, yes, it's been going on a long time. I think we're vulnerable. I think they may be in our systems more than we know. The second route that's being taken, too, is sort of by the Russian mafia, and that's the even separate of the Russian government, but it's coming out of Russia where they are, going into the financial systems and actually, hacking bank accounts, et cetera, at an alarming rate.
Yeah, they're the ones who are probably behind going, your Social Security's, under hack. Call law enforcement now to report it.
Right.
Who knows who those people are. But
exactly.
It's scary stuff. I wanted to get your thoughts, because you obviously served in Congress. You were at one point in charge of the Capitol Police, if I remember correctly.
Yes, I was.
Washington Post came out with a new analysis of January 6th. They found over the course of the 78 minutes from the first breach until they breached the Capitol, 17 calls were made for backup and no response. Thoughts?
Right. Well, I think that the system, and obviously I think this report is really important that the Post has put out, because again, 17 requests for backup, and it was in 78 minutes, and they have really reconstructed exactly what happened, where it failed. And I think that it failed in several points. Definitely at the top of the food chain. I keep reading about in these stories about the police board. Again, I served out there. It went from the Speaker's office to me, because I chaired House Administration, to the House Sergeant of Arms, the Deputy Sergeant of Arms, over to the Senate and through the system. The police board, which I hear about all the time, and I'm sure the members wouldn't like me saying this, but I think there's 6 members on there. It's been there for a long time, and it really doesn't have authority. Nobody calls the police board for anything. So I think that the system failed at the level of the Sergeant of Arms, of the House and the Senate, and the Chief of Police. And I think that the system failed tremendously.
Yeah.
And when I read this about the amount of calls for backup in 78 minutes that weren't answered, that is a system that's in heart failure.
Yeah,
and they need to obviously improve the system. And I would say this, it's not just a matter of hiring more officers. We have a great force out there. I do hate seeing the Capitol Hill police disparaged as they are. We have a lot of great policemen and women out there. But the system, it's not, again, Rick, about adding people. It's about making that system react. We had a slow reaction, basically, when 9/11 occurred. We, Steny Hoyer, myself, the Minority Leader Pelosi at the time, and Hastert, the Speaker, all the offices worked together to make that system function. They need to do that type of thing again.
Yeah. Finally, I want to get your thoughts on, I think we talked about this the other day, but President Biden's pulling out all of the troops from Afghanistan before September 11th, I guess, is the goal. And look, I think he's citing, this is what the last administration agreed to. We need to do it. But he came out and said, look, there's not going to be a 5th president who's going to have to inherit this mess. We're getting out now. I'm curious your thought.
I think it's a good thing to do. I think he's going to stop the forever war, our longest war. We have a twofold mission that we started over there. I was in Afghanistan twice with delegations. One was military, the other was civil. And I stress that because this was a country that had, at that time, 20,000 telephones. I mean, it was very, very behind. So we had a dual path. We also, had the civil path to help the government actually, try to modernize. We can continue to advise on that end of it, not with troops, but with, actually kind of the business advice, how to run the systems, improve the systems to make the government stronger. But as far as having troops there, I think they need to come back. And, President Trump was starting that, and President Biden will finish it. And he will not take 4 years to finish it. I think it's the right thing to do.
No, we got to get out of there. There's no question about it. Are you surprised, though, that he didn't declare victory? Because we've done that in the past. We declared victory and get out. Are you surprised that he didn't? He just said it's time to get out?
No, I mean, look, there's controversy, some controversy on the Hill about, getting out and, did we win or not? Look, we didn't win. We went over and we routed out the Taliban and eventually got bin Laden. That's a success.
Yeah. I don't know what winning is, Bob. Nobody defined to me what winning is.
And exactly, Rick. And President Biden, when he was Senator Biden, the one thing he is well known for on Capitol Hill is his knowledge of foreign affairs, how the world works, and our interactions with it. And there's no way that as president, with all the knowledge he has over his 30 years in the Congress, there's no way he's going to say, okay, well, we won that one, didn't we? He's going to leave. He'll admit, to what's happened over several decades before he was president. And if he's asked, he's not going to sugarcoat it to say, oh, hey, no, this was, we won it. No. That's why we're leaving. He's not going to do that.
Right. No,
he's been around too long.
I don't know my problem is I don't know what winning looks like in that equation. So
it doesn't, and again, we went in and we, routed out the Taliban, helped to establish a new government, and then it just went on and on and on. At some point in time, the government has to stand. It's the same in Iraq, and basically Iraq, has made it very clear they don't want us there.
Yep.
And when you see that, it's definitely time to go.
Gather the sheep and get the flock out.
Get them out.
I'm right there with you. Bob, I appreciate the time, as always, my good friend.
Thank you, Rick.
our good friend Bob Ney. Let's take a quick break. Right back to wrap things up. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
Saving work in America, one show at a time. The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1916. That was the day that the American Federation of Teachers was founded at a meeting at the City Club in downtown Chicago. 3 Chicago teachers groups helped to organize the meeting. They were convinced that in order to improve working conditions for teachers, they would need to formally join the labor movement. In 1902, the Chicago Teachers Federation had become the first teachers organization in the nation to join their Central Labor Council. Now they believed it was time to form a national organization. The meeting was also attended by representatives from nearby Gary, Indiana, as well as New York City, Washington, D.C., and Scranton, Pennsylvania. Just a few weeks after the meeting, the American Federation of Teachers had received its charter from the American Federation of Labor. The new union grew quickly. Within 4 months, 174 locals approached membership of 10,000 educators. But then came a backlash from school boards who did not want to negotiate with the new unions. Board members publicly called into question whether it was appropriate for teachers to unionize. The American Federation of Teachers numbers fell to below 5,000. But the union was not swayed from their cause. They renewed their efforts and again began to grow. In the 1950s, some teachers became the targets of anti-communist hysteria. This highlighted the importance of having a union to protect academic freedom. The 1960s was a time of increased teacher actions and strikes. The American Federation of Teachers more than tripled from 60,000 to 200,000 by the end of the decade. Today, the American Federation of Teachers represents more than 1 million members across the nation. While under increasing attacks, teachers are an important force in today's national labor movement.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So our senatorial Jack and Jill are at it again. Mitt Romney and Christian Simina. This time they've got a college proposal, and I'll be honest, I'm not adverse to it on its surface. They're calling it the Earn to Learn Act. It's going to allow low-income students to be able to pay for their college by creating savings accounts that if you qualify, and they're going to use the Pell Grant as the qualifier. If you qualify for Pell Grant, you qualify for this program, that if you put $1 into a savings account, the states who participate or nonprofit groups who may be involved in this will give an extra $8 for every $1 you put in. Little skin in the game kind of thing. Not horribly opposed to it, to be honest. So you put $1 in, they throw in $8. Money going to come from, I would assume, the tax base. Evidently, Arizona has been doing this for the last 10 years, I guess. And again, it's only for the low-income people who are qualify to get the Pell Grant. And what they found is that first-year retention, almost 90%. Which means, and I think about myself, because the reason I dropped out of college the first time, broke, didn't have the money, was no longer able to play football, had a neck injury, lost a boatload of money, and didn't have it to replace. My grandparents didn't have the money to put me through school, so it was go get a job. Something like this could have been in place to help. Maybe I wouldn't be sitting here. Maybe I would be a geophysicist on my way to Switzerland. Who knows? But this sounds like I'm willing to listen. I would prefer it to be the way it was, where, We just take our tax dollars, we pay for the schools and for the infrastructure, and people go and pay a little bit like they did back in the old days. Like I've said a bunch of times, I have a friend who went all the way through the University of Michigan, all the way through law school, through the undergrad, through law school, the whole thing, graduated without any debt. Nothing. This was back in the 60s, mind you. No debt. She did it on a minimum wage job, lived in a crummy apartment, drove a jalopy car, but wasn't saddled with a lifetime of debt. How can we get back to that? Maybe this is a conversation to be had. Now, as the parent of 3 kids who are looking at that college, I'm looking at that number going, it's almost insurmountable for families to deal with, and we need policy something. And even if we're not going to get to the free college, which I don't think is possible, we got to make it much more affordable for working class families. Because understand, the very wealthy, they're going to be able to pay for it. And in fact, a lot of the very wealthy, they get scholarships because they donate huge amounts of money to the endowments. And we'll find a magic scholarship for you. We got to do something. So I'm not opposed to it. My ears are open, and that's where we'll leave that. If you missed any of today's program, thericksmithshow.com. That's where you go to get the podcast, the Rick Smith Show app on the smartphone. Take the program on the go wherever you go. And as always, you can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Thanks so much for tuning in. Love to hear your thoughts. See you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.